go to a different computer.
Hello, my friends. Hello, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. How are you guys doing tonight? Hello, Curtis, Rue, Gordon, Jocelyn, Jose, Mr. Mission Control. See a lot of familiar names. Good to see you guys. Busy day news-wise. Took a break, went to lunch with some friends, and find out the stock market's imploding and everything's going on. Alejandria. Good to see you. Hello, Amanda. Hello, Melissa and Maya and Stephanie. So, guys, so much going on today. What is on your minds? Are you guys worried about tomorrow? I know some sources were saying tomorrow is going to be perhaps the day the economy crashes. Of course, we see everything going on in France, still ongoing. Paris is tense. A lot of fears about the economy. Bank stocks fall the most since June 2016. Enter a bear market. And there's been an awful lot of talk about that, about basically the economic collapse possibly being upon us. Yes, no fear. No fear, just prepared. So after going out to lunch, went and got some more supplies, took advantage of some sales, stocked up on more canned goods, more rice, more beans, more lentils, all that stuff. I think we could live at least a year off of this, though I think others in the family would say otherwise. But yet, it all depends on how much you eat. Well, I got some flour, and I'm a pretty good cook. I could definitely make some cakes. I see Maylin likes cake. I do too. Yeah, I gotta share with you guys too. We had some weird stuff. I was just meditating, and we live kind of out in the woods, and I hear buzzing. It's the weirdest buzzing sound. Kind of like if you had almost a few bees right next to you, but there's no bees in the house. Then it sounded like it was right outside the window. Almost sounded like a drone. Then I find out that there was a lot of odd things going on with my computer while I was in there. And kind of like not wanting to cooperate. Weird stuff. I've definitely had a lot of issues again with sound, which drives me crazy because I don't know what's causing it. It's almost like somebody takes over the computer. And, maybe they actually do. I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, there's rumors about a huge wave hitting Alaska. I heard somebody talking about a tsunami. There are a lot of waves from that storm that's up that way. But no signs of anything from a tsunami standpoint. Yes, and so Watchman says he's in Arkansas and has a lot of military air traffic, and I'm getting messages from everybody all around the country seeing tons of military traffic, even in the UK, seeing a lot of unusual military traffic. And even in areas that don't usually have a lot of that traffic. So it's very interesting. There's definitely something going up. And then they buried that video I did talking about Paris and President Trump. That just kind of got buried. Every now and then when there's one that comes up that they don't really like you talking about those things, they just kind of bury it. And the numbers don't change. They demonetize. So I found it fascinating that President Trump all of a sudden was saying that we're spending too much on the military. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Chris B says more helicopters there also, but Victoria houses Canada's Western Fleet. So, but is it at unusual levels, Chris? Brad 675 says he sees trains of military stuff north of the UK. Yeah, National Day of Mourning for George Bush tomorrow. Well, I know I got a message from Amazon that one of my packages is not going to get delivered because of it. So, and that's like another 25-pound bag of beans. Yes, watch the elite wake up, Gordon says. I hope so, Marcus. Yeah, I'm hearing what Brad is hearing as well about, you know, military moves in the UK. It seems like there's a lot of either helicopters, well, yeah, a lot of helicopters, but then also airplanes as well. And Amanda's asking if I got the pic that she sent me. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I've actually went through so many photos lately, and I'd have to go back and look through and see. Yeah, the 5th is the day everybody's been talking about. Yes, yeah, most of the air traffic seems to be combat, warthogs and Apaches. There's a lot of things going on, Great Scott. Definitely a lot of things. Starbucks 777 lives in Southeast, has been here in choppers. Yeah, I'm getting it from, see, family members in the UK, also in Kansas, in Nebraska, here in North Carolina, as well as up in Virginia and Tennessee as well. Kind of from all over, been hearing it. Hey Jason, yes, thank you for sending the Foxfire pics. I had never seen anything like that before. Very unusual. It actually looked like a creepy alien up in a tree. But I guess they're just mushrooms. And Gordon, thank you for all the group hugs always. Yeah, all the military air traffic, I mean, something's going to go on. And then, you know, I mean, Bush talking about cutting, the need to cut military, because, I mean, look at who he surrounded himself with the whole time. I've always felt that he was totally backed by the military-industrial complex. So it really makes me wonder what's going on. And some have suggested that perhaps it's all about the fact that the governments are realizing there's bigger things heading our way. I would love to think that's the case, but kind of skeptical about that. And then we have the Chinese dumping over $1 billion of U.S. real estate in the third quarter. That's a big sign right there. Valine Schmidt says, did BP do a video? I know, is he back on? Is BP Earthwatch back on the air? And Amanda Mason's asking if people are getting arrested tomorrow. Well, I wonder, yeah, are we talking about a lot of the rumors that are talking about, obviously, deep state members getting arrested? Like, you know, I've seen people putting up videos about the Clintons and all that. Okay, so he's back as Earthwatch. Okay, well, I will have to go and subscribe to him again. I love BP. I love his, like, hurricane coverage and just his, he feels like an uncle, you know what I mean? He's just a great guy. Helicopters everywhere. So, I mean, China dumping over $1 billion in U.S. real estate in the third quarter really says something, too. Because, I mean, these are all the actions that that would make you more concerned about some sort of military confrontation, you know, because you're clearing yourself, and you're also basically trying to hurt the other guy. So you're clearing yourself of any entanglement with them, as well as, you know, trying to affect negatively their economic situation. And we have our flat earth family in the house, I see. Yes, yeah, exactly. They were dumping real estate. Timothy was asking that. Yeah, they were definitely dumping real estate. And so Chinese investors offloaded more than $1 billion in the U.S. real estate market in the third quarter, extending their recent retreat from hotels, office buildings, and other foreign property under pressure from Beijing to reduce debt and curb money sent abroad. Insurers, conglomerates, and other big investors in China sold $1.05 billion worth of U.S. real estate in the third quarter. That's the second straight quarter in which Chinese were net sellers of U.S. commercial real estate. And so that's the first time these investors sold more U.S. property than they bought since 2008. And we all know what happened in 2008, right, guys? And speaking of the French being fed up, I've heard from some family members in France as well. And basically sharing that this isn't going to stop, in their opinion, until Macron steps down. Even though Macron is now offering to put off the tax for 6 months, that ain't going to cut it. And it's going to take more than that. So will we see the end of his regime? There's a young lady named Greta Thunberg who is doing a hunger strike for the climate as well. Hello, caller. You're on the air. Who do we have with us now?
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air.
I've been watching your show for a while. And, my name is John, by the way.
Hi, John. Good to hear from you. How are you doing tonight?
All right, how are you?
Doing good. Doing good. And what would you like to talk about?
I don't know if any of you guys know about the sun simulator. I know a lot of people say, oh, it's a fake thing. But, I always remember the sun being a yellowish orange. How about you?
Most definitely, and not as big. You know, it just wasn't as big. Now it's kind of white and appears to be much larger.
Oh no, the thing it is horrible right now. I mean, it's back in the day you could look at it and you could look at it for a few seconds. Now you can't even glance at it. It's so bright and horrible, and it's I never remembered it like that. And then the other day, I had my video camera out. Me and my girlfriend she was in the living room and I was in the bedroom, and I was doing my own thing. She was watching her TV, and I'm sitting here, and it starts blinking. The sun starts blinking. Well, not the sun, because that is whatever that is out there. That's not the sun no more. It's not the sun. I don't know if it's a sun simulator or they're hiding stuff in the sky with the chemtrails and all that other stuff. But it was blinking, flash, 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 and she saw it too. And it's I don't know what the heck's going on. Because I don't know if this is religious channel, or I'm not getting religion or nothing, but I know the Bible says look for this in the signs of the sky, the moon, earthquakes in diverse places and stuff, and all that stuff seems to be happening right now, and pretty much I'm on the East Coast, and pretty much for the past, I don't know, since October, we've been all overcast right now. Because they haven't been spraying or nothing. It's been all overcast skies, and we can't see the sun. Well, technically I lied. The other day we saw the sun. It was out yesterday for about maybe about 20 minutes, and then they started to come out and spraying again. And then it got all overcast again. What's your opinion on that?
It's definitely different. It's clearly different. It feels different. Just like if you just kind of sense it, it just feels different. I'm not sure. I've made videos about the sun simulator because there is that technology out there. It's been out there for a while. So, it's possible that there's something like that going on. It's possible that there's changes in the sun, because there's changes really in every planet in the solar system is going through changes. And it's possibly is larger than that. It might actually be the entire galaxy. We don't really know. But there's definitely changes going on. I don't buy that it's all just simply because there's more particulates in the air because of the grand solar minimum, and that's it. Because those... Some people that were... No. I don't buy that. I don't buy that anyway. I don't buy that at all. They're spraying and stuff, and then you got these other channels, and they're saying that oh yeah, this is the new normal here. Look at the moon. Look at the moon. It's on the news right now, saying, oh, these are the new moon phases right here. You saw that, right? Yeah, I did. I definitely did, and I know
it's never happened before, and now they're saying, oh yeah, this has always happened.
Yeah.
All the sheeple are going to believe it.
Nomad Apocalypse in the chat room just said Neptune has literally flipped on its side. The equatorial line is now vertical. I remember reading that too. So everything is truly changing. There's an evolution of sorts going on, a huge change, and without a doubt, I do think obviously the chemtrails have an effect, but we're seeing stuff up there. Like from the video today, I've seen this object up there too many times. That's not the moon, and it's not our sun. I'm not sure what it is. People say that maybe it's one of the planets of Nibiru or something in the Nibiru Nemesis system, but it does seem like it's highly likely to me that there's probably some other sort of planetary system here as well. The sun's definitely changed, without a doubt. It's not the same sun, and the planet's changing too. We could see it and feel it. We're changing. It's...
with all the earthquakes and all the volcanic activity and everything, they're trying to hide stuff. Because, look at it this way. It was, the Dow, I don't know if this makes any sense either, but the Dow dropped over 800 points today.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow the stock market's not going to be open because of the George Bush's passing, so it's not going to be back up until Thursday. I don't know why, but they did that with Reagan and Carter too.
And that's interesting, the timing of that, because so many people were talking about the 5th being the day that the economic collapse.
Yeah, the 5th, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's so weird. And then we had President Trump all of a sudden wanting to cut the money being spent on the military. That was like such an about face, because he's always been all about spending more and more and more on the military. There's definitely a lot of strange things going on. And then there's so many sources, that are definitely giving us complete cataclysmic perspectives on what's going to come. And then there's the sources that are saying, like, if you're listening to Tony Taylor, who's in the chat room now, she has her own channel. It's an awesome channel. It's part of the Ascension. Tony Taylor?
Tony Taylor?
Yeah. So,
okay, I got to read that down. Her channel's name Tony Taylor, Toni, or?
Her channel is simply T Taylor.
Okay,
Tay.
Taylor?
Yep, Taylor,
okay,
and
I'll check that out then.
her perspective on it, and I agree with her, is that we're going through what's called ascension, and that's something that I first read about, I think, about 30 years ago, and it just, when I read it, it clicked with me, and it felt like that was truth. And it's all about basically us changing our frequency. When you look at it, reality's like one particular band on a radio. And so it's like our whole reality is kind of shifting up the scale a notch. And so everything is changing. And of course we have, those darker entities that have been controlling this world, which are trying to hide these things from us.
Well, you don't have to have them control you if you don't let them. But speaking of that, though, with the ascension and the new thing you were talking about, I was doing some research, and this thing really scared the crap out of me. It's you remember back in the day, it was the 2012 stuff when everything was supposed to, the world was supposed to end, and because of the Mayan calendar and everything.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe we all died and came back, or maybe we all just shifted, because the Mayan calendar, and I know everybody's, a lot of people in the chat or whatever, they're going to say, oh yeah, because daylight savings hours, it should have been back then or whatever. I'm not going to get into that, but maybe that's when it happened, because look at all this Mandela effect stuff that's been happening since then.
Yeah, I think I've heard other people say that too, and I think that the Mayan calendar wasn't off. I think that our reality shifted, and
exactly, because I distinctly remember. You ever watch the Whose Line Is It Anyway show?
Oh yeah.
You ever see that? I remember distinctly, Ryan Stiles used to pick on Carol Channing all the time.
I remember.
He used to do the voice, and I remember one day she died, and then like a few weeks later, she's alive, and because she's like, I think like 98 now or something. But I remember she died, and I'm saying, oh my God. It's gonna be, he can't pick on her anymore. He can't, do the voices anymore, because, and she died, and she's still alive. I mean, what the Mandela effect with me is, like, some of it's complete, BS. Some of it's I'm on the fence with, and some of it's 100% scaring the crap out of me because it's real.
Well, yeah, it is, and it's interesting how our reality is changing. So many people I've talked to, too, they notice that dreams are different now. Dreams just feel different. Everything feels different. Reality feels different. So many people can actually sense energy now. They'll feel their body buzzing, tingling. They'll feel vibrations in their feet, or maybe even they feel they're shaking under their feet of the earth itself.
I can hear stuff in my ears all the time. It's like it's buzzing, and I'm not talking about the what is it, the ringing in the ear. I can hear that all the time, but it's like this resonance. I hear that, and then it like goes down my whole body now, and it scares the crap out of me. I'm like, what the heck's going on? I don't know.
There's changes going on, definitely. But what's
the powers that be, man. The powers that be, they're scared of it because we're all waking up, and they don't want that to happen.
It's true, but the thing that we need to do more than anything is to just keep grounding ourselves and rooting ourselves. Like I had shared that yesterday I felt horrible, honestly, and I felt almost like I was under a kind of a psychic attack. And really I went and did it like a daily ritual that I always do, but I hadn't done it yet at that point. And then took a bath and meditated for an hour. And I came back feeling awesome, like feeling great. And so I really think that we are becoming way more energetic. And we could also affect positive change so much faster. So we could manifest things in this physical realm. Just like in a dream, if you could realize that you're dreaming and lucid dream,
you can take control of the dream, you can take control of the real world.
Exactly. Exactly, my friend. Well, thank you so much for this call. It was a great start-off call. I hope you will call us again.
All right. Do you do this all the time, or once in a while, or?
I try to do it every Tuesday, and then try to add in another one or two here and there. But every Tuesday we will be doing it, pretty much 8 o'clock standard Eastern time.
Okay. And what's your name again?
I'm Michael.
I'm Michael too.
There you go. Well, good to meet you, Michael.
And one last thing: if any of your callers and if any of you feel sick or anything, get Nor chicken bouillon cubes, cut one of them in half, put it in a coffee cup, put some pepper in there, boil it. It's delicious, and it will help you. It'll make you better in no time. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking my call. I appreciate that, and I hope to talk to you again.
Most definitely. Thank you for the call. It was a great call, and take care, my friend.
All right. God bless you, man.
You too. God bless.
All right, bye.
And so that was Michael, a first-time caller, and that was a very good call. And here we go. We got another caller coming in. And is this Brother Rue?
So that was Michael, a first-time caller. It was a very good call. Yeah.
You're on the air, my brother.
Hey, how's it going, Michael?
Good. How are you today?
Doing good, doing in very good spirits, and I thank you for taking my call as well. And I must owe you a gratitude and thanks for these many months of enlisting and welcoming all of us to this community so positively.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my honor, and I love it. I love being encircled by you guys. You're awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's been a wonderful journey. It's been an up and down, but I mean, it's something that I've been wanting to call in for about and kind of discuss, because it's something that we discussed for a long time, and then it seems to have dropped off the radar. And I'm glad that earlier you mentioned that there were some of the flat earthers in the room, because it seems like what originally broke, and started this community of everyone looking for truth suddenly has become in the back burner. And I feel like in these times when we're all still arguing with each other about who's right and who's wrong, and which myth is right and which myth is wrong, I feel that purposely they're doing this to keep us away from the truth that's already been in front of us the whole time. And I speak of these ancient scriptures that have been around for millennia and obviously have been distorted by whether it may be the Cabal or the ancient aliens or whomever, but we all seem to not remember these scriptures that I've been researching for quite a while, specifically the Book of Enoch. And I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this Book of Enoch, because out of all the texts I've been reading, his version is very different from what everything else is out there. Mm-hmm. And when you read it, it kind of reads as if it's a timeline of not only one ancient culture, but many ancient cultures, and just the wording is very confusing, but when you sit there and read it through, it starts to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, I've read it several times, and probably the last time was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. But I'll go back to it here and there. And it's interesting because, of course, it talks about the Watchers and, the fallen ones, the Nephilim, everything. And it gets into so much detail. What we get out of Genesis 6 is like nothing. It's like
Nothing.
it's just kind of like what.
Now it's an edited version of the Book of Enoch.
Oh, completely.
How there's chapters missing in the King James version that are clearly readable in Enoch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's such an abbreviated story that you could tell that when they were putting together the Bible, they were like, oh, well, they can't hear this, so they just
Correct.
chopped it right out. And there's a lot of spots like that in the Bible, and that's what really, got me to start questioning all my Bible teachers, and then they had no answers, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to do a lot more research on my own at that point. And it's fascinating. Now, I was bringing this up, I think, in one of the videos in the last couple of days. When you look at it, if you compare what happens in it to most of the tribal people around the world, most of the other civilizations, these people that came down, they taught us, and they're kind of revered, and they weren't really, they weren't viewed in a negative light. They actually showed us how to, do agriculture and things like baking bread and whatever,
Right.
Now in the Book of Enoch twist, it's very negative, but well, in the biblical perspective, it actually just says that's why the flood, came, is to wipe out the offspring, the giants.
Explain why.
Exactly. So what's your take?
So when you sit and read the Book of Enoch, first thing I noticed is, and I read this, I mean, my story from waking up is pretty not so common, I would say. I was very lucky to go to Peru and actually went up to the mountains and did an ayahuasca experience.
Oh.
And, I went to Peru with not much thinking about ayahuasca, but thinking from what I have read on the internet that it's this amazing, experience. But, at that point, I had lost my light, I should say. I was born Catholic, and we became kind of like you, a family that just stood spiritually, but kind of pushed away from the church, and we just never realized why. And when I went to Peru and I had this experience, it kind of left me dumbfounded. I mean, the things I had seen, I couldn't describe in our words, in English words, and I grew up speaking Spanish, and I couldn't even describe them in Spanish. So then I noticed that when that same experience, I went to talk to the village, to this lady I met in the village, who had this little shop and was a merchant, and the day prior connected really well, and she explained to me about the ancient gods, that things of their culture, which I have never heard of, because obviously here in the Western world they don't teach us those in school. So as she's explaining all these things, I'm like, wow, these sound very similar to things that I have grown up hearing in the Bible, and it left me kind of with questions. And then I went and had this experience up in the mountain, and then the following day I still couldn't describe it to this lady, so I drew them down of what I had seen. And when I went to visit her the following day, she was there with her mother, so quite interesting that I got to meet 2 generations of these beautiful ancient people from Peru. And when I showed her what I had seen, the mother gasped, and they started speaking Quechua, which is their ancient language. And of course, I couldn't understand anything they were saying, and as the young lady translated to me, she had explained that her mother was telling her what I had experienced and who I had seen were their ancient gods. So that left me with questions of why would I see these things if it's something I've never known, I've never seen pictures or depictions of these things, and it just kind of blew my mind. And, with lack of verbal and understanding of their culture and language, it was really hard to even understand what she was telling me. So I came back to the U.S. and started searching, and kind of got into conversation at work, and this was around the time where the internet kind of blew up about the Yanni and Laurel. And then it kind of left me with those same questions. I'm like, well, in our own language, we misinterpret what people say to us. So why not misinterpret what was written to us, especially ancient languages and culture? And when you start reading ancient texts, that's what you kind of start to pick up, that our translations of these ancient texts, especially Hebrew texts, was already changed. And yet we still follow these scriptures as total truth. And then the whole flat earth theory came out, and that blew my mind, that, theories that were in the past told to us as myths were resurfacing, and people were thinking about these things for themselves and not going by what masses was telling them. So that kind of led me into this world of discovery, and then I landed on the Book of Enoch, and I read it in its entirety in a week, and then I reread it in a following week, and I reread it for a third time. So I spent a month reading this book, and every time I read it, I found more and more answers, and then you realize that it's kind of written out in order. And not only is it written in order, but it also describes a repetition of our civilization, the growth and how animals came to be, and even how the universe came to be. But it's always spoken in repetition, as if it was a poem. So when you start to decipher this, you start to then go back in pages and chapters to kind of decipher what you just read. And then when you start to really decipher, what it comes down to be is that, again, it speaks of everything as being in form of a plane. And you start looking at definitions of words that will all lead you back into a different meaning of words that we have been taught our entire lives. For example, in the Book of Enoch, it explains that these 200 came down and ascended and took on wives. But even in Wikipedia, when you look up the definition of wives, it explains that wives is described as the genitalia of both men and women, but it's specifically women. So even these definitions, modern definitions for words that are been around us, kind of change the definition of what you just read. So when you go back and read the Book of Enoch, and you now read that these men ascended and took on wives, you now start to read it that they took on partners, instead of just describing it so literally as the word wife. And then you start looking at other words and start not taking them so literally, but then you start realizing that even though this book is written what can seem very fictional and very mythical, is not. It's very literal. And then there's words that are used in certain contexts that are now used in other parts of the chapter that are twisted and take on a new meaning, and names take on new names, and verses take on new verses. But you notice that it's at a specific time, as Enoch explains everything. He explains from the beginning, before the ascenders came down, and even when Adam and Eve came down, and even at the times of flood with Noah. And then as you start reading through these chapters, you start noticing that names get omitted. So it's very much to me that the Book of Enoch, hence why it's been hidden from us for so long, for over, and explain to those that may have not read the Book of Enoch, the Book of Enoch actually is 2,000 years prior to the Bible. So it's funny to me how this book, which was around 2,000 years collected from the most recent version that we found, was a series of books found in Ethiopia in, I believe, in with the dates, I think it's like 1940 something, but it's very recent in our history. And yet we find this book that was hidden from us for so long, and then yet explains the Bible, and yet every other cultural story perfectly, and actually takes them and combines them all, and then it all makes sense. So it's funny to me how, we're still all fighting about who's right and who's wrong, and yet in the Book of Enoch, it basically says we're all right. And that the biggest point of his story is that God and the light of God, his glory, is actually within us, and therefore the power within us and the power within the watchers is us, because since we're sons of God and the image of God, and then you explain the stories of the ET invasion and how they, manipulated our DNA, it actually puts that in light very perfectly as well. So it leaves me with questions of, again, is everything that they're coming up with this whole NASA story with meteors, and you put it so very well yesterday about how could nuclear bombs explode exactly how meteor strikes exploded, and yet the Book of Enoch explains of these ancient weapons against the God and not against the sons of man, because God was trying to punish those offenders that came and did wrong and sinned against the sons of God.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And, you know, one thing to keep in mind, that anything that was originally translated in Hebrew, they never wrote down the vowels. So it was up to the interpretation of the person. So, you know, when people say, some people will say, because they've been conditioned to say it, that there's absolutely no errors in the Bible. The Bible's 100% accurate, 100% whatever. It's just not true, because there have been so many people that have been interpreting it, putting vowels in as we go. For, you know, now, what, 2,500 years? Because the earliest texts of the Bible, you know, the 5 books of Moses, you know, they're probably from about 500 or 600 BC, as far as the time that they were actually starting to write them down. Before that, it's all oral tradition as well. So that even gives you even more, you know, where there could be discrepancies and also opportunities to hide parts of it and to not give you the actual, you know, interpretation. And so when we think about the Bible is just, you know, if we look at, you know, the modern Bible, it's 66 books put together. And there were hundreds in circulation, as you know. Tony Taylor was saying, Book of Thomas, and there's so many of them, Jubilees, and you know, there's a million books. Well, not a million, but there probably was really anywhere between, you know, 500 to 1,000 that were in just circulation, that people could have pulled out this scroll, this scripture, and go and start to quote. So when they composed this back in 325 AD in the Council of Nicaea, once they had their official version, which really what it did was it gave, you know, the Roman emperor at the time power over his people, because he was going to be able to control both their physical body and their spiritual aspect at the same time. As I've said before, he was a smart man, and if you can't beat Christianity, you know, because it's...
might as well join them.
Exactly, but then make your own version.
Correct. Work from the inside out. If you can't beat them, well, how does a virus kill the human body? It works from the inside out.
Exactly.
You know, these demons that we are so scared of as a collective society work from the inside out. That's why even in the book of Enoch says that these gods fell under sin, because the sin is this deception and the fact that, you know, they wanted to control man and create and become God in itself, and then rule as if they were God and continue the deception.
Exactly. You know, exactly. So when you look at like the universal truths that we've found in many other philosophies as well, you know, and the oneness of things, the fractal nature of the universe, and so if it is a fractal universe, then God lies within us. Every single person, not just the king who's worshipped as a god or the Caesar. And so, you know, that's exactly what has kind of happened, you know, because we see it. And, you know, we got July and August, which, you know, those months are named after the Caesars, who were living gods. That's how they wanted to be viewed. And then that morphed into the Catholic Church, and which has still controlled the kings of Europe. And, you know, Rothschild has said, you know, I don't care who the king is, as long as I control the money. So that's one aspect of the beast system. The other aspect is the religious. So control the money, control the philosophy, you know, and the afterlife, and then you really control the entire world.
Right. And I compare it to the game of Monopoly. You know, I had a best friend growing up that for years I never realized how he would always win, until you realize that, you know, they're hiding pieces or money from you and changing the rules on you because they know the rules a little bit better than you. So how can you win a game when the rules are constantly being changed and swapped on you? And yet, you know, as a society, we do it. The rules that were written by our ancestors were all changed on us, and we still in modern day do it now. You know, those that can tell us what happened, just alone, there's a theory popping up that I've had since a child, that now they're calling it the mud flood, about how they think that there was buildings here prior to Christopher Columbus, and any ancient civilizations that we can know of were here prior. and you start to think about, some, when you're out in the middle of Arizona in Monument Valley, and you start looking at those formations, and they start to not only appear to what you had seen in ancient texts from Egypt, and they start to look like these, all of a sudden, cities, like almost Emerald City in an oasis of desert. And you start to wonder, why do these ancient places have names like Pyramid Valley and Monument Valley and sacred lands of, and what such? And yet the ones that can tell us this, we've locked them all up in, nursing homes, and we all told them that they're crazy, but now we discover these truths, and then I ask us all to go back that can still talk to our elders and ask them, Grandpa, what's that story about those little green men you used to tell me as a child? Because I'm now discovering information that those little green people may have been right, and yet we used to call those people crazy. And it's that constant word of crazy, calling each other crazy, that our theories and our beliefs are crazy, and we put each other at arms and fight over that belief. And yet we call each other crazy, but yet the theory of flat Earth doesn't seem as much more insane to me as a theory that, perhaps meteorites are man-made and being shipped off in NASA rockets and literally deposited over the Earth. Because if you read the book of Enoch, it explains that the earth and the heavens were at 1.1 until the whole deception happened. So when you start reading about these ancient, cities with advanced technology, could this have been a form of ancient technology? Like you said yesterday in your video, that they explode exactly like nuclear bombs. So I think it's quite ironic that something that we see in modern life is depicted in ancient life, and yet we call those ancient experiences myths and crazy and falsy.
Yeah, it's all really fascinating. Actually, what we get from quantum physics and a lot of the theoretical scientists, that are looking at the evidence, and will even come out and say, it appears that we're living in some sort of matrix, some sort of illusion, really, like a holographic universe. And then that would make it a projection of something. And when you look deeper into that, like if you ever did read the book, The Holographic Universe, it says that reality is probably 2D. And that this is a holograph. This 3D reality is actually a holograph of, it's a holograph of a 2D reality. So in that sense, then you could understand flat Earth. And I've always thought that with the flat Earth thing, if this is just a matrix, it's all just a matrix anyway. So when we look at it, everything is, for one, not even solid. When you really look at it, with the electrons, circling the core, the neutron, and the proton, it's mostly vacuum, and then it doesn't even really take form until there's somebody observing it.
Correct.
So.
It's the 3D perspective, and they teach you this in the earliest forms of art and architecture. When you're drawing, a 3D landscape on paper, you have to remember that you're drawing 3D because everything you're looking at is perspective. So you draw straight lines, and you draw them in angles and in certain perspectives to make that image on flat paper appear 3D. And it's funny how, they can teach us that, but then the whole other theories they tell us are myths and falsies, and it's just funny to me how this is constant back and forth.
It is, everything to cover up the truth. But I think the part that really is the big point is that we are much more powerful than we think,
Yeah.
But they don't want us to think that. So that's where I have a problem with the whole concept of original sin, because it just puts you in such a negative light right off the bat. So we need to get out of that mind frame.
Right. Yeah, I had seen a documentary, and I've been trying to find it on YouTube as well, where there was I forget his name, and he was an Italian literalist, literalist, yeah. And he was hired by the Vatican to translate the original text from the original books from the Bible. And he had found after reading these books that there was no mention of sin. So that concept alone seems to all of a sudden appear in later versions of the Bible, which I would like to bring up, that later version of the Bible only became available to masses because of Gutenberg and the invention of the Gutenberg press. That was the first book he decided to print in masses. He was not only a Freemason, but he was also hired by the king to produce this version and give it out to the masses. So if we already had, knowing that this king was all powerful and was controlling, manipulating, then the one version that we've been following has already been corrupted from the start, and it's been spread upon by masses, and yet we still follow it as 100% word, and then are frightened, through history to not question it, through medieval ages, through the burning of the witches and the Salem witch trials. I mean, modern times. I mean, we're talking about how YouTube and the CNN is blocking all of us from talking. Because, like you said, it is the power. It's the fact that we all get together and talk and not argue about these theories and try to find the truth in them. It's crazy to me that we use the word crazy and call those teachers crazy. We've called Einstein crazy. We've called all our great inventors from the back in the day crazy, but yet they were all geniuses at the same time. And then, the most famous one to me as a child, who asked a lot of questions and was told to shut up quite often, that kept me going, was the story of Nostradamus, how he was self-taught in so many degrees. He was a self-taught engineer, self-taught architect, and this amazing man, along with Michelangelo, were all self-taught. But yet we follow them on word. But yet these modern words that we add to ancient technology and beliefs, engineering, architecture, art, that was taught to us prior to that, we totally discord, put on discord.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think about it. The levels of control. It's been, I believe that they've been in control for thousands of years. I don't think it's not just going back to the founding of the Illuminati in Bavaria or anything like that. It's way beyond that. Way.
Right.
I mean, we're going way back to Sumerian times, or even farther. So
even before that, yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Sumerian times was the only modern record that we have found, and then yet in the book that we read, we speak of lands that have not been discovered, and even names of lands that have been changed on us. The book of Enoch speaks of how Uriel was one of the ascendants and the leaders of these ascendants who tried to restore the peace and fought for man. Uriel is in charge of man, and yet Uriel was also in charge of Earth and Tartarus. Through all history we know of Earth, but what is this mystical land Tartarus that they speak of? And yet you start looking at more ancient texts and the word Tartarus starts coming out again, like such forth in Greek mythology.
I love mythology too. I love piecing it together and checking out the different pantheons and trying to figure out who is who and where is where.
Right.
Now the Vedas are very ancient. I think they're much more ancient than we think. And I actually, I feel like some of the Hindu legends, mythology could be the oldest, of it all. Perhaps, there's some things in the mystery traditions. People will bring up, the emerald tablets as well.
Yes.
And so those are very fascinating as well, the Emerald Tablet of Thoth. But when you start reading, the Hindu scriptures too, because they get into the wars of the gods and everything, and the battles of the Asuras and the Devas, and so one of the things that happens a lot in cultures is that the gods of my enemy are my demons, and vice versa, and that's how things have gotten twisted. So it's unfortunate because there probably are a lot of good guys, and I do believe that there are a lot of good guys out there.
Correct.
that are viewed in a negative light, and then probably vice versa, simply by all the confusion and manipulation.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you start to just put, like you said, the puzzle together and start playing with, these ancient texts and just the stories, and you start playing with them, and you start to actually think about it for yourself and kind of in a fresh light, where kind of like a clean slate, and you can kind of play these scenes in your movie. And I even laugh because, we're quick to say that these movies that, that these production companies are putting out are just, stories. And you start now reading ancient texts. For one great example I love to talk with my friends is, the story of Wonder Woman. And they speak of Amazonians and how Wonder Woman is the half-daughter of Zeus. And then you start reading Greek mythology, and then they go into further details, but then you start reading the Hindu religions, and they start going into more detail of how it was, there was a battle between Zeus and his brother, and when you start changing the names, of course, it starts to make that connection. And there was this ancient battle between two brothers, and then you start thinking about the two battles between the brothers in the Bible, between Cain and Abel, and then you start just, again, hearing these stories in repetition, and then it just kind of starts clicking into place,
Most definitely. And I think some beings obviously were probably physically here and are actually beings, and then I think others of these deities reside really more in the astral realm and in higher dimensions. And it's pretty interesting. If you ever go into a lot of the Buddhist texts, it's pretty wild because, let's be honest, who meditates more than the Buddhists, right? So they have done so much in-depth meditation exploring the astral realms where they find all these different beings exist. And so when you start studying, like I had a period where I went through studying ceremonial magic, Wicca, and then chaos magic. Yeah, all these different forms, and it led me to chaos magic, which then is so highly incorporates in quantum physics, and it's much different, in the sense that it's much more scientific. And in reality, when we look at energy, even if these beings never existed, there would be an energy current, a power available now because of everybody that believes in them. So that it's the same thing as if they never existed or if they did. It doesn't matter. Because there's so much energy from people's intent on those beings. So we need to be careful about not creating negative beings, through our fear. And, so like one of the...
And the power of our word as well, too.
Exactly. Very true. We have to really have good control over our mind and not be fear-based. Again, it's always, obviously don't have your head in the sand. If a tidal wave's coming, it's a good time to move, But
right, exactly. There's divine intervention, and then there's human intervention. I always say, and the human intervention, I feel, is what's been plaguing us the whole time, because the human as an idea and the human mind has been sculpted for us. The human hasn't been able to think freely for themselves in eons, and it's funny how in the book of Enoch it even explains that, again, these deities, and he doesn't explain them as deities, he actually explains them as these celestial images. And when you then go reading in further chapters, as he's speaking to, as the angels are actually explaining this to Enoch, they explain to him that the stars are actually prisons for some of these gods that had transgressed against God. And again, that brings back that whole theory of Nibiru and that Saturn worship. Could these have been ancient deities that, that we have not ever seen, especially the reappearance of Nibiru? Could this have been some ancient god or deity that had been around and maybe transgressed and was set up there by some ancient force as a punishment, and only reappears, with our calling, so to speak, But again, that can be explained as an elliptical resurfacence of this ancient deity, So again, you can pretty much use an explanation, both scientific and biblical, to explain exactly what we're all seeing and what we're all going through right now. Whether it's these X's that are marking buildings, that can be explained as possibly as the veil being being lifted, and now these celestial lights are shining brighter than ever. Hence, why the sun could be shining brighter than ever. And it was weird because as I started thinking about the sun so much and this whole Satan sun worship, I started going back over pictures, and I remember that back, I think it was in 2008, I think it was the first reappearance of Nibiru, because I have pictures where in the late evening, I think at 7, 8 p.m., and this is when I was living back in the East Coast, at Far Rockaway, New York, on the beach, where we were all gazing at the sky because we were astonished at how it had seemingly seemed that there was two suns in the sky, because what we were looking at didn't appear to be the moon. It had shone way too brightly, and then the sun was setting clear behind us in its normal pattern. And, then the news article kind of called it the supermoon and all of this. But then I remember that exact same night, several hours later, we had all witnessed in the same sky a second moon appear, which had not looked anything like what we had just seen. It wasn't colored the same. And we were all questioning as a group, how could it be possible that you can see this moon appear in the sky in the same trajectory twice in one evening? So that started kind of rehashing a lot of these ancient memories that I had. Some of these theories that I've had as a child, and the questioning as I had as a child of the biblical scriptures, and why every Sunday the questions I'd ask seemed to get brushed off, or they just didn't seem to have the answer themselves. But instead of admitting they didn't, they just explained it, brushed off, that that's the way of the will of God, and never honestly give you an answer.
Exactly. That's all fascinating stuff. I mean, I saw that too. I was watching the moon. I've shared this, with another person, and I saw it go blank. I mean, it was like, it had the, craters, and then it went blank, and then it kind of came back, and then it wavered, and it made me think, holy crap, is all this an illusion? What's going on? Things are definitely changing. And then there's that, whatever it is that I was showing in the, video today, that people have been seeing, and I've seen it too. I mean, I've taken photos of it and zoomed in, and it kind of looks like a blank moon, similar to a moon, but it's not the moon, because it's not in the spot where the moon should be that day. So, it's got to be something else, but it's just, it's interesting too. And I've been, playing a little bit, like another friend up here who's had she's actually been clinically dead, but we were in her yard, and we're looking up at the stars, and she's like, oh, there's that star that I always play with, and she's like, watch it, and we're watching it, and it's twinkling, and it's moving, and I'm like, she's like, do you see that? And I'm like, yeah, I see it. It's kind of moving. Why is it moving like that? And she said, oh, it always does that. So it just makes you wonder if it's almost like, these things are beings on some level, because ultimately everything's consciousness. So maybe we're able to interact now differently with everything around us.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about the observing of the sky, because, for a while when I'm, watching your channel and hearing all these, these things that people are seeing in the sky, I kind of got a little jealous, because I'm like, I'm not seeing any of this stuff, and then I'm like, you start just to wonder about what's up there, and my curiosity, about what's up there has always been there as a child. And, growing up a very modest family, you don't have access to a telescope. And, the other day I finally decided to bite the bullet and buy a telescope, and I stared through the lens for, what seemed I was maybe all night. From when the sun had set to the sun came up, and I obviously had to stop, but what caught me off guard is that no matter what I stared at the sky, which I have a companion app, that I can basically use my phone and point at the sky, and it will tell me what star I'm looking at. Whether I was looking at a star or what the app was telling me was a planet, appeared to look the same through a telescope. It appeared to look as a twinkling light, whether it was orange for Venus or Mars, or it was white for Uranus, and it kind of made me upset because I thought I had a broken telescope, you know. But then I had to stop and think about, I honestly don't know what a real star looks like. I don't know what a real planet looks like, because the only thing that I can go by is a CGI image produced by NASA. So I honestly can't say that what I'm looking at in the sky when I look through those lenses is a moon or a star or a deity or a god, but I can tell you for sure that they all look the same, you know. And then the only thing that I can observe through that lens that can give me real definition is the moon. But yet when you're staring at the moon and it's kind of appearing to kind of flicker at you and wave in and out, and then what I thought I had been up for several hours, and I was like, okay, I really need to go to bed, was when I'm trying to, you know, focus on the moon, and what it seems suddenly to the moon move 4 steps ahead in front of my telescope, as if it was not allowing me to view it, you know. So that kind of made me seem like, okay, I'm now going insane, and I am now that word that I hate so much, I'm going crazy. But then it actually also had me stop and remember that this past summer I went to a summer festival in the desert, and everyone might know the name of Burning Man, you know. And it's a great art festival about love and culture and arts and sciences all getting together, and it's a community about demodification and no monetization. So you're not even allowed to sell anything there. You know, it's a gifting community. You know, so everyone brings enough to survive in the hot desert for a week straight, and then bring enough to share with your neighbor and become communal and know them and talk to them, because there is no cell phone, there is no electricity out there, and it forces you to kind of get away, you know. But one thing that caught me, that really stood out from myself and everyone at this year's festival, was that one of the art exhibits was a balloon, an inflatable balloon, and people can actually see this for themselves on YouTube, unless it gets pulled down by the time we're talking, that is of a fake moon that was internally lit. And they set this balloon to float in the sky, in the dark sky of the desert. So it floated and matched in the sky perfectly. And we were all staring at it together as a collective, and everyone collectively started freaking out when we all started to notice that what we were looking at was a second moon, and it started moving, and it appeared to be exactly a copy of what was the real moon in our night sky. You know,
wow.
It left everyone at this event just perplexed when we left, because how could our own eyes deceive us? We all know it's a fake moon. We all saw it appear in the sky from one night to another as they were raising it, but yet we couldn't believe our own eyes. You know, it was a collective, you know, and this festival is estimated, I believe, that this year it was 80,000 people in the desert. So this is a community that's left, that comes up overnight, and the purpose, you know, at the end is to leave no trace. So it's a community that is very respectful to the environment, and yet a community with scientists. I mean, they had a Tesla coil, you know, that I thought was myth, you know, and they had used it to create sound because they connected it to an organ, and they were able to produce sound from this keyboard. You know, so we were all understanding that there was some real scientific things going on in this event, and not only beautiful art and beautiful connection, but yet we were all astonished by this move. You know, so that also reminded myself that we can easily be deceived by just what's in front of our eyes, even when we're being told that it is fake.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it really is, and I think that's part of our ascension process. Is we're able to see through everything now, and you know, they're not going to be able to keep it hidden from us anymore. And I want to thank you for the call, Brother Rue. Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you.
I know it was a tangent and it's a long one, but I do thank you, and it's just something I think we all need to wake up, and you know, let's just be mindful that we're in this together as a community.
We are, and I'm so glad you're a part of the family. You're an awesome resource, and you know, maybe we'll have to have you on, you know, just you someday on a show, because you could definitely inform us.
Thank you. Yes, I have plenty months of research, and I try to keep it an abridged version tonight. So.
Well, thank you, Brother Rue, for sharing. You are loved and appreciated.
Thank you, sir. God bless to you and everyone on this channel.
God bless, brother.
Thank you all.
And so that was Brother Rue, and I know we've had a couple other people calling in. It was a longer call, but you know, he shares so much with me, and he is a fountain of information. He reminds me of myself, really, honestly. He's just got all these questions, and he's going to get them answered. Hello, caller, you're on the air. Who do we have with us now?
Well, hello, Michael. It's Tony Taylor, T. Taylor.
Hey, there you are. How are you?
Hi. I'm great. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. So, gosh, we have Rue, and now we have you, and it's just a magnificent night.
It is a good night. Yeah, that Mercury retro has been a little tough, I think, on a lot of people. So I kind of came out of my shell a little bit more today, just because the last few days, I think, will be active until about the 6th or 7th of December. So it's a lot of energy. So everybody just be aware, a lot of misunderstandings, a lot of people being hypersensitive, even people being physically triggered. So sometimes it's best just to kind of retract at that point, be more the observer, not to get too emotionally involved, just kind of observe. So some of my advice. But no, I love the callers you've had on. I think there's some really great topics, and I just been active in the chat, so I just wanted to throw a couple of things out there from my perspective, of course. I know we were talking about the Sun Quote Simulator earlier, and what I wanted to do is, I know a lot of people are kind of in that process of waking up, and they're looking around, they're seeing all this chaos, they're seeing things that look strange or abnormal to them for what we have been taught is A, normal for human physical biology, and B, what we're taught is normal for what we see around us with the planets, with the sun, with the moon, and what we can see with our visual perception. So I just kind of wanted to throw my 2 cents in, if that's all right, real quick.
Oh, of course. Please do.
Okay. So my puzzle piece, if anybody's not familiar with who I am, I run a YouTube channel myself. I came forward in March 2017. I'll make it real quick. I started having very strange physical changes that my doctors and colleagues could not explain. I'd worked in the medical field for over 15 plus years, so I knew what was normal for human biology and what was not. So when I started getting no answers, I just started to document the process. Mine really was triggered from the NDE, so a near-death experience. I woke up from the surgery just being able to see more layers, more details in the surroundings, which is really just more dimensions. Dimensions aren't really that complicated. I think a lot of people get into the process when they start to awaken, and it's like all this information, and I don't really know what it means, and everybody seems to have a different perception. But to really simplify things, we're just starting to see more layers and details in our surroundings. Because we had our DNA, the way I explain it is like we had a cast put on. So we still had mobility, we still had function, but we didn't have the full mobility that we would normally have if we didn't have that cast there. So both the sides of our brains were kind of separated, the left and the right brain, they weren't synced like they should have been, and the pineal gland was shut down through a variety of angles. Fluoride, vaccines, GMOs, you name it. There was a variety of frequencies that we didn't know about, all being targeted to keep us from using the full abilities that we can encompass. So now as these higher photonic lights come in, most people notice the switch with the sun. I would say last spring, people start to really say, the sun was like an old light bulb. You know, the old light bulbs, they were more golden, a little bit softer ray. It wasn't as bright to look at. And now it's like, it's so bright. I love the Fifth World. She's a good friend of mine. I love, I think it's Mr. BB too. So many people have captured so many amazing images of the sun in the sky that looks different. It looks hexagonal in shape. The light is different. I feel amazing now when I go in the sun. It used to be I couldn't go in the sun because I used to have lupus and a bunch of other symptoms. And now I go in, my sparkles. One of the things I show on my channel in explicit detail is this physical change we are going through, many of us. And you'll notice you kind of look like a vampire from Twilight because you start to sparkle in the sunlight is one of the symptoms. And so the sun is, I don't believe, my personal opinion, not a simulator. I think my personal opinion is as we change to a crystalline grid, the reason we are changing in a big part is because the Earth is changing. The Earth has said, I'm tired, I've had enough, it's time for me to go through my 26,000-year cycle, and I am choosing to rise in frequency. So like fleas, kind of on the back of the Earth, we have the choice whether we want to rise in frequency with the Earth or not. So you'll start to notice a lot of people deciding They do not wish to do that, so they're going to take what I would call an escape route, an exit hatch. That can look like a variety of different things, from natural accidents like a car accident to disease, decay, and just sometimes self-harm. You'll start to notice as the frequencies rise, we encompass this bigger visual perception because it actually changes the visual ability that we have within our eyes. It adds light spectrums that we can see. There was a guy I just was turned on to a couple days ago, which I think is fascinating. His name is David Memes, and you can find him on Facebook, Nemes. And he's made an invention where he can capture these, quote, interdimensional beings with a camera of some kind. And I think it's very interesting because a lot of what he shows is what I started being able to see once I woke up from that NDE. And what a lot of people are starting to notice right now. Probably a lot of your viewers in the chat right now will start to, I say some of these symptoms will be like check, check, check. You'll start to notice that you can see, like when you look at the stars, you'll start to see more rings around the stars, and that they almost look like little pixelated TV screens sometimes. I was just saying in the chat, try interacting with them, right?
Oh yeah,
it's
definitely.
It's a little crazy.
Definitely,
and then
yeah.
also you'll start to notice out of the corners of your eyes, it'll start with the corners, the peripheral vision, of course, first, and you'll start to notice flashes of colors, almost the outline of shapes sometimes, not really detailed facial features. Usually they're very bright, so usually white or blue originally. You also start to notice when you go to sleep at night, when you close your eyes, you have these geometries or these like TV screens you can almost see playing. And that's just part of this visual perception, because every part of your cellular structure is starting to change, as is everything around us. So you'll start to notice that the animals and the children will be the first to notice your changes. So you almost develop this kind of telepathic ability with them. So try it out is my advice. I know a lot of people at home are probably like, oh, I've noticed weird things with my animals. Like I can't go from room to room without them all starting to follow me now. Because they just pick up on that higher frequency. But with that, you'll also notice that you can trigger people very easily as well. It's like you were saying earlier, it's like a radio station. We're just tuning into a higher or a different radio station, that's all. And that needs to happen. So please don't anybody be in fear. I know it's kind of freaky because there's so much information out there, but don't be in fear about it. That it makes the process much more difficult. So I recommend tuning into stations like yours and other places to find support so that you can talk to people about these things. Because one of the worst things that you can do is isolate yourself and kind of get stuck in your own head about some of this. You do need to go within, but sometimes we get stuck on a loop. And as we start to become more cellularly advanced and activate more of that DNA, sometimes we tune into what I call the field. And the field is not just our thoughts, it's everybody's thoughts. So sometimes thoughts come in, or an emotion will come in, because we also develop empathy on levels we didn't have before, and we grab at it. But it's not necessarily ours. And sometimes that's where it gets a little dicey. So make very sure that you're clear on which energies you want in your field and which ones you don't.
Everything is intensifying for sure. Like yesterday in meditation, it was just like as soon as I just calm my mind, I'm seeing all these faces, and it's just, I'm like, who are these people? I don't even know who they are, but there's like people contacting me, and there's just random faces coming, and it got me wondering, because I'll see things like that from time to time, but I mean literally it was just like 10 faces in a row just kept flashing through, and not anybody I've ever seen before. So it made me really start to think after the meditation, is it subscribers? Is it people like watching my videos, and like the connection now is so strong that I'm actually seeing, them like kind of mentally reaching out to me, or I was wondering if it was spirit guide related or something else related, but it was just so crystal clear. And I really do think that that's part of the thing that's going to happen as we rise in vibration. And it could be uncomfortable at times, because there's a lot of people getting ringing in the ears and all sorts of different sensations now. So we need to connect to the earth as much as possible and root and ground, in order to help the energetic flow. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And as you're saying that, it's so funny because when I first came out, I didn't have my own channel, and I would just participate in some live streams on a friend of mine's channel. And I had a few people say to me, once I saw you, and I was like, I've seen her before, but never in real life. And I didn't even connect that necessarily until I saw you on this live stream, and then I went, oh my gosh, I've seen her in the astral realm, or I've seen her in my dreams. And it was this just instant connection, and exactly what you're saying, we will just start to telepathically be able to connect with people, even though we haven't met them in the physical. If they're on the same frequency as us, we will be able to connect with them. So now it's like I have connected with some people in the most amazing ways, though I've not met them in the physical. They're just soul family. And so they're just that same frequency. And so it's like, well, oftentimes I'll be having a bad moment, or they might be having a bad moment, and we just reach out to each other because we just are already connected. And that's one of the most beautiful things ever. In fact, when April was on The Fifth World and I were on your show a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine had said the same thing. I've seen her, but I'd never seen her in real life. Is this, and then I sent her a clip of the show, and she was like, that is her. That's exactly, but she'd never met her physically. It was just in that astral realm and that telepathic connection.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, this is all brand new. And so for a lot of people, it could be very uncomfortable and very disconcerting. And I'm sure there's some people that feel like, am I going a little crazy at times? What's up with this? Because our reality is getting to be so much, higher vibrational, more ethereal. It's getting to be more like a dream state. And, the Australian Aborigines say this is the return to the dream time.
Absolutely. And I also want to touch on real quick. Now, a lot of people, when they start this process, there's many different phases. I actually have a video called The 12 Stages of the Light Body. Now, not everybody's going to hit each stage exactly. Everybody's very unique with their strands of DNA. So people are going to do this in a very unique process for them, and a very unique pace for themselves. So there's no one-size-fits-all. However, it is a good place to start. But they do talk about how at one point, you will, when you go through the process, there's going to be this big X where your dreams used to be. Even if you were somebody who, like I was, had the most amazing ability to, I used to call myself a wanderer because I could stop my dreams, I could start my dreams, I could leave a place if I didn't like the energy. If something weird went down, I could actually pull myself out. But once I went through this awakening process, there was a few months period. I'd say for me it was about 3 to 6 months, where there was just this blank spot where my dreams used to be, and I was very a lucid dreamer. I could always recall my dreams. They were very colorful. But everybody seems to go through that from what I have gotten feedback on. So don't be concerned if that happens to you. That is part of the process. I was told by my higher self or guides or whatever you want to say, that is because once we awaken, we kind of have to go back to school. We kind of have to go to class. And so we do that during that dream state, sometimes that astral realm at night. But we can't bring all that information down consciously. It stays in our subconscious because we're still learning some of those lessons. So if we came back with all of that knowledge, it would kind of inhibit the path that we need to take sometimes. Does that make sense? So, yeah, just don't be concerned if that happens. Yeah,
definitely. And some people were talking in the chat room about the squirrels, and it does get me thinking about the animals because we could sense each other's energies, and I find it interesting that it's like I'm out there, and we have so many animals around here. There could be opossums, raccoons, skunks, whatever on the deck at any time, and they're not afraid of me. I think it's because they read my energy, and it's like when I'm out there meditating, the birds are almost practically landing on my shoulder. I actually had one land on my shoulder at one time, which was cool. So they could read your energy, and I think that all this is increasing tremendously right now.
Right, and it will. I hate to say this because a lot of people are going to be like, oh, because it used to be we would get these waves that would come in, and then we would have a couple of months to readjust. We would have a couple of months to go, okay, let me get used to my ears ringing. I'm seeing a lot of that in the chat. Let me get used to these different, these kind of visual perceptions that are changing. Let me get used to this different stuff. But now it's just wave after wave after wave. And we're not really going to have that downtime anymore because this is kind of what's being, you could say it's been talked about in every text, sacred text as far back as we have records. But it's a lot like, that we're going through the separation of the weak from the chaff. People who are not going to be able to tolerate these higher frequencies, who don't really want to get on board with this new energy, they're going to have a very difficult time the more these waves come in. So like 1212 is a giant wave coming in, and the animals are, of course, the first to pick up on it because they have a very unbiased, pure connection with Source. So they don't have to go through what we do, which is that unprogramming. And I say sometimes the older that we are in this 3D reality, the more unprogramming, that some of us have to go through because we've been around for longer. We've had more frequencies targeted at us. We've had more interference, I would say, in a different level. It does seem like for some reason there is RH negatives I think there's something there. I don't think it makes them better than anybody. I do think that they maybe had an easier time with already being activated in a certain way. I have a theory that maybe the heart chakra was already slightly activated with RH negatives. I'm not sure on that for sure. But it does seem like they activated a little bit, some of them prior to some of the RH positives. But I'm not saying that changes anything. I think everybody can activate what I call the 144,000 DNA strands. I think we all have the ability to do that. We all have the same gifts. It's just, a friend of mine says it's a lot like a muscle. Some of us use, our leg muscles more than we use our arm muscles. Some of us, it just depends on which area you want to flex your gift in. But I think everybody has a beautiful puzzle piece. And as we all start to awaken, it's all of us. That is the key. It's not one of us. If people are listening to somebody right now and it's like it's my way or the highway, you have to do it my way, please use your discernment, because it's about all of us bringing our own individual puzzle pieces together so we can see the whole. It's not about one individual. I think that's very important.
It is. That's part of the thing that we're to overcome in this time period, and I totally believe that. I believe that's part of my personal mission, is to try to bring people together. We have to have tolerance and patience for each other, and understand that we all are looking at this world through our own prism. So everyone is a unique fractal image of God, basically, and that's something we have to appreciate. And there's diversity, but then there's also unity in that diversity, and that's something that we have to learn to be just more tolerant of and just find beauty in it. And so as we're shifting from this duality consciousness to what's going to become a unity consciousness, that's the lessons that we have to learn.
Could not agree more. Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think, especially there's so much chaos going on right now, and we have a lot of different people coming forward, because I know when I started to awaken, I originally was trying to beat everybody in my physical world over the head with what awakened me. Aren't you? Because right when I awakened, Pizzagate was happening and all these others, look at this, and why aren't you seeing me sparkling like you are supposed to love me? Why won't you even? Because I would try to show the people in my physical reality just my physical symptoms. Like, this is not normal, please look at me. And they literally would get triggered. I remember my mom at one point had even turned her chair around, because I'd actually put one of my videos when I first came forward and put it on the big screen, and said, please just look, because I could not get my own mother to look at me. And she said, even if I see it, I will not believe it, because I do not believe in the impossible. And so what I want to say to a lot of people is, as they awaken, we all have some rabbit hole that we go down, whether that's chemtrails, whether that's, the pedogate thing, or whatever that is for each individual. We all have an original rabbit hole. But what is your rabbit hole might not necessarily be somebody else's rabbit hole. So try to plant seeds where you can. But if you push and push and push, you will only meet resistance, which will make the process take much longer with that individual. So try to plant little seeds, but acknowledge the fact that each person will go through this on a time scale, a unique scale for them. One of my favorite things that I heard early on, too, is it's kind of like, I think this was in What the Bleep Do We Know, that movie, but they talk about this shaman who, as the boats were coming in, I think I said this to you last time, but for people that are new, as they were about to be invaded, the Native Americans, there was this armada of ships out there, but they'd never seen anything like that. So as human beings, we don't have a reference to it. If we don't almost have an image to it, it's very hard for us to understand it or even see it with our visual eyes. So as this new process happens, not only to us, but to the environment around us, it's, like you were saying, we need to pick up on the energy almost more than see it with our visual eyes, because it took that shaman sitting on the beach for 2 weeks and looking at the water every day because he could feel the energy. He couldn't see it yet because he didn't have anything to reference it to. But once he sat there, and then finally after 2 weeks, he was like, oh my God, I see those giant ships. Don't you see them? And then he was able to help the other people see it, because he formed a reference point. So I think, like, when I came forward with my videos, that was a big thing. Everybody thought I was crazy originally, even though so many people have talked about this process for millennia. When I showed it, most people had not seen it before, so I got a lot of flack. But then it was like spark by spark, then they were like, oh my gosh, it's happening to me, now it's real. And then they would show somebody else, oh my gosh, it's happening to me. It's happening to me. You know what I mean? And so I think we'd only seen about 10% of our actual reality. And so now we're all just starting to become accustomed to seeing, like that other caller was saying, maybe something major did shift in 2012. But it's taken us little bits at a time to be able to formulate these new reference points, to be able to actually see it and comprehend it and start to understand it.
Yes, exactly. And so it's that 100th monkey, scenario.
Exactly.
And we've seen that with many studies, with meditation as well. You could affect, they had studies where basically between 100 and 1,000 people were meditating, and in fact, it affected the crime rate in cities of people, millions of people, in such a positive way with just that few people's consciousness. So, we need to wake up, and that's why I keep, preaching basically. We need to wake up as many as possible. We need to reach more people and, to let them know what's really, truly possible, because, as we're focusing on, and I know you're focusing on, the bright aspects, there are these dark forces that want to keep us in the lower realm. And they've done it through so many, ways, including war. And we were discussing this at lunch with, really good friends today. And, war is this vicious cycle. And it just keeps us in a negative loop. And, it could pull a beautiful soul downwards into such, horrible depravity that it actually affects that soul, perhaps even for other lifetimes, creating a negative karmic loop. And so that's how they're kind of keeping us tied to this, because, this is a spiritual warfare that's going on. As we know, it's been quoted in many different holy books, whether we're talking the Bible or the Vedas and so many different, traditions. It's a spiritual war ultimately, and there's these beings that want to keep us in this lower vibratory level. And that's how they use us and abuse us, really, in so many ways. And that's the big truth, though, is like what you're saying here. It's really about the ascension, which they want to, they want to keep as many people from ascending as possible. They want as many people opting out as possible, because then they could still maintain some sort of control. And with people ascending, they're ascending on up and out of their hands and their ability to control them.
Right. Absolutely. There's something you just said that I really want to touch on too. I feel like I'm being pushed on a little bit. So as you were saying that war thing, I use in some of my early videos, I did this whole. I did some song montages, sometimes with slides, and then I put my own words in sometimes. But there's a lot of clips in one of my early videos about war, and what I focused on though was not war, but about the images of the men comforting other men during times of war, or men comforting children during times of war. Because exactly what you were saying, war cannot. There's one of the slides I use all the time too. Even I just used it not too long ago. Anybody who's looked into the eyes of a dying soldier would never say, "Let's start a war." Like it doesn't work like that, because men become haunted by war, and it's usually men. There are women now. I'm not saying that it doesn't affect women, but generally men are the ones doing most of the fighting. And we're having a large percentage of men and women now waking up during their contracts with being in the military. So we're seeing a very large suicide rate, because they're looking around and saying, "I can't do 2 more years of this. I can't do another year of this. I can't even do 8 more months of this." And then they're going through this awakening process while they're still contracted. And that can be, my dad was a Marine, that can be a very difficult journey. So we need to support our veterans. We need to support our military. Some of them are the best of the best, and they didn't go into it knowing what they know now, is what I would say. And so it's also part of this divine masculine. So the divine masculine had always been a little more accelerated. That was part of the issue, that wasn't a balance. So what we're seeing now is the divine feminine coming in and balancing out. That's why you're seeing a lot of like Me Too movements, women coming forward with weird stuff, and it's that trying to balance. But each person has both masculine and feminine attributes. So it's not, please don't take it as just a male or a female thing, but we all need to be I explain it to a lot of my viewers, like, if you have men around you, and like my guy in particular is struggling with this process, because in the past life he was a soldier in many of them, and he had done things that are karmically coming due now. This is a end cycle. We're at a 26,000 year end cycle. So karmic stuff is coming due now. The scales are being weighed now. So it's like a lot of males All right, they're also developing this empathy, and empathy, many guys did have empathic abilities, but now we're seeing more and more get empathy on levels they had not necessarily experienced it before. And so it's kind of like some guys are having like a PMS moment for the first time. So I'm telling all my viewers, be very kind and sensitive to everybody. Everybody is going through this process. We do not know what another journey has been, not only in this life or a past life. So, like I said, all these scales are being weighed now. So we can't take any of this stuff with us as we climb these frequencies. So not only are we settling our debts in this life, like you said, we are settling debts in past life. And a lot of people are having these emotions come to the surface, especially during times of Mercury retrograde and things like that, where all of a sudden you just get angry or frustrated or sad. I can't tell you how many viewers I've had say to me, I just sobbed all day and I don't even know why. And it's because some of that is because we're clearing these old lives, and that just has to happen, and it's okay. So just trust your body. Take a sick day if you need to. Do whatever you need to do to support yourself during that, even if those in your physical surroundings don't necessarily support you in that, is what I would say.
Well, that's definitely good advice. And it's exciting times to be alive for sure. And these are times of tremendous change. And I always keep thinking about some of the Bible verses, because that's such a background for me. And one of the ones that fascinated me the most was, basically where he says, lo, I will tell you a mystery. We shall not all die, but we shall all be changed. So, what more exciting time could we possibly be living in?
Exactly. I know. I like to... I like to tell people too, a lot of people are fed into this programming that we have to go through this Armageddon. I was told the word to use was software, program. When at the very beginning of my awakening, I kept being told to use these words that just, honestly, it all makes sense now. But then I was very confused because I was like, are you telling me I'm in a virtual reality? Which maybe we are. Yeah. But at the time, I was very confused because it kept saying to me, at the very beginning, I was called to do, I guess now I would look back and say it was grid work, but at the time I didn't know what it was after my ND. I was just called to go outside at night, stare at the stars, and do this kind of weird energy work meditation with my hands. But I was told very specifically to use the word, put up a firewall around your geographic location, because there's going to be some earth changes, but you do not have to go through the Armageddon software or the Armageddon program that initially people were going to have to go through, because you could say that 100th monkey mark almost at this point. Like, so many people have raised their consciousness to a level that we don't have to go through all of that. Now, will there be some earth changes? Yes, because the earth has to cleanse itself, just like we have to cleanse ourselves to rise in frequency. So a lot of people get sick during those ascension symptoms. People get that flu symptoms. People cough stuff up. I coughed stuff up for 6 months. I threw up for 6 months. People have to go through these weird changes with their cellular level, but the earth is doing the same. Think of how much blood, like we were talking about the wars, has been spilled on the earth. So it has to cleanse those energies as well, so it can rise as well, but it's disruptive sometimes. I was told, though, like it says in the Bible, some people will not have to be displaced. Some people will have like a little bubble around them, which is why I think my guides told me to use the word firewall, build a firewall. So I live right next to a volcano, though, that is active. I live right next to Mount Baker. I live in Washington State, so knock on wood. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of keeping my eye out, but at the same time, it's like, we just have to be aware. You do need to be aware. Putting your head in the bowl is not going to help anybody, because we need to be able to help our other brothers and sisters that are suffering. And so it is important that I love your channel, because you do talk about real things that are happening. It'd be nice for us all to sit on a mountain in Peru and just meditate and all day long. That would be great, but it's not realistic to many of us.
Right. Well, maybe we should do a Peru trip at some time. That would be beautiful.
I would love that. Oh my gosh.
Most definitely.
Anyways, I won't tie you up for too long. I was in the chat though, and I just wanted to say a couple things and pop in. We will have to talk more in the future, but I'll let you go so other people can get in here. And I just want to say how wonderful I think your channel is, and the group that is just so loving that surrounds that. It's just great.
Well, thank you for being a big part of it. We love you.
All right. Thanks. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye. Namaste. So that was Toni Taylor. So you can check out her channel. It's T Taylor, and she does definitely specialize in ascension and everything that we're going through right now. And so much love out there. And Gordon's up for a Peru trip. I see that. And talking about love. Hello, brother.
Love will make it light. Love. Bye. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to prank call.
So how are...
That's what I need to start doing, making some positive prank calls.
There you go. There you go. And in case you guys couldn't hear, this is Netsaya. So Netsaya is with us on a regular basis, and definitely somebody I call brother. So what's on your mind tonight, brother?
Wow, like my phone's been acting up, but I did hear most of the beautiful heron of love and light, Miss Taylor. I hope I got that right.
You did.
Miss Taylor, I think that's her name, was talking about it. It's amazing stuff that she was saying. I resonated with everything, the same messages I've gotten and everything, except for one thing, and I will clear that up in a little bit. And I'm sure she'll be like, oh, well, I see what you mean by that. But how's things going for you, brother?
Good. I actually feel great. You know, it's, as I shared yesterday morning, I felt lousy. But after some baths, some meditation, energy work, I feel awesome. And so, I mean, this Peru trip sounds interesting. Chris P. in the chat says he has a Peruvian grandmother. So maybe we could all meet at Chris P.'s grandma's place in Peru. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Huh. That's interesting, yeah. Definitely. I actually been guided to go there, too. I found this town there, what is it called? I forgot the name, but it's pretty close to Machu Picchu. And the thing that I liked, as odd as it may sound, people, I seen that around this time, right before Christmas, they get together the whole entire town. Right? It's a small town. It would be about a good 5,000 people or so, and they have festivities and everything. And guess what? The number one thing is to release old emotional pent-up energy and traumas. How? Get this, by pugilism. Yes, you have young 11-year-old girls fighting each other to release. And then you have 58-year-old women fighting each other. Just for a split second, and yes, there's like the town elders right there, which are the ones that actually conduct this thing. For what? To release negative pent-up energy. When you fight someone that you have a misunderstanding with that just keeps going and going and going, when you just do that, you eliminate it without wanting to kill each other. And therefore, at the end, guess what happens? Just like in most real fights that you see in the UFC, which is fake, the boxing, which is somewhat also, corrupted, they always hug each other at the end because it's natural. How do I know? Because I was a gladiator in the ring. Okay, I fought amongst thousands of people, and at the end, it was beautiful. We all hugged. It's not about making each other bleed and this and that. So that's another thing I want to talk to you guys about we are all true warriors. But aside from that, so that's my thought on that, Michael.
And you were undefeated, weren't you?
Yes. I'm undefeated. And believe it or not, people, I walked in. Okay, well, yeah, I walked into that too. I walked into Netsaya, all right, and before day one. Okay, they tried to take out Jesus, who is Netsaya, me, myself. I know this sounds weird, but I need to start talking this way because it is the truth. We need to start embracing that other self inside of us. We have masculine and feminine, yes, but whether it's two or more in my name, there I am with amongst you. So then the higher self comes into spirit, meaning into body, and then you can communicate with it through the weirdest things, having a bird fly by, and you actually come back, and then a butterfly comes back, but then it comes really near you. That's spirit right there, letting you know. Anyhow, yeah, Michael, that was that. Sorry.
and I know there's so much going on right now. So what else is on your mind? Because we've talked about so many different topics, and
well, go ahead.
And I was going to say, I mean, I know, we've been talking about how many military planes we've seen. We've seen a lot of those. There's so much activity going on. There's, the financial stuff going on. And then the good news that we're really going through ascension. And so, we're clearing ourselves of so much needed, purging of things that maybe we've held on to for too long that have held us back. So we're ready to move forward into a new world together. But what is it that you feel like you want to get out there tonight the most?
The most is astral sponsors. This is exactly what you have been talking about earlier, when I heard it earlier, and that's exactly what the only difference I have in what Taylor was saying. Miss Taylor was saying. Astral sponsors is once, whether you're awake or not, okay? At this point, everybody is awake. Even if you don't feel like it, even if you don't think so, trust me, you are awake. So this is where a quick clear up on what Taylor said about this part is when we all of a sudden feel off, okay? No, we're not clearing no. That is, sorry. No disrespect, not saying no. It's just a misunderstanding of some sort. But what is happening is because we're becoming more empathic even more and compassionate, meaning co-passionate with another, is you're receiving another's, whether it's a living being next to you, next door, or your daughter in the next room, or, like she mentioned, yes, your past life or an ancestor, okay? And no, you don't just, I'm not saying that you said that, you just sit there and kind of trust your body. No, yes. You don't just sit there, though, and trust your body. When this happens, you just tell yourself in your mind somehow, some way, like if you're praying to God, say, thank you for trusting me, all right, with this opportunity, for allowing me to clear this for us. The next time I give for in the name, I'll do it for you, because that way I in a conscious state will forgive your killers, your rapists, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but thank you for acknowledging me, and I will do this job for you. So the next time you go to church, if you go to church, the next time you go to what your church should be, is, meaning like, if for those of you that like to go hiking and go under a waterfall, that can be a church, okay? Or when you're in the street light and you in the stoplight and you see a woman with a child with a sign, and you happen to have $2 and you hear yourself say, maybe you should give us the $2. And you do so, in that process, you give for the path that made her be poor this time around, and that person that was contacting you while you were feeling off all of a sudden. So, with this in mind, the more you wake up, the more you're going to get these etheric sponsors. They're going to be, wow, look at this. It's just another investor, in a sense, in the other realm beyond fourth dimension and above, okay? And the more you do, like say, for instance, Michael, don't mean to toot your own horn, but you have at least 52 guys behind you. And I don't mean just normal street level thug type of guys. No, I mean like big time, like ascended masters from different galaxies, not even from this galaxy, brother. I know this sounds crazy to some of you, but it's fine. You guys can think whatever you want. So, with that in mind, you'll be able to clear. That's what that whole Pono comes about. Where if the child is sick, okay, the ancient Polynesians, once a young couple brought a sick child to the shaman or whatever, he would be like, okay, place the child on the side, give him a little tea, but let's go straight to the parents. And then they would grab 3 and 3, at least 3 males, 3 females, elders, and then they would commune and figure out what is going on, because if the sickest child energetically, that means there's something wrong with the parents.
And I've felt that before when I was, one of my earlier clients that I had worked on, I could feel the energy going through me and into her when I was doing energy work on her. And then all of a sudden it was just incredible, because I felt a rush of energy, like somebody put 2 hands on my shoulders, and the energy that went through me wasn't mine, and it was so strong. And her eyes just bugged wide open, and she just was staring straight up. She was laying on my massage table, and she was staring straight up. And then she didn't really say much to me after the session, but she went to the owner of the clinic after I had worked on her and said to her that she had a vision of basically heaven opening up, and she was talking to her parents. And I know that wasn't me that did that. And so as I've worked on people and done more energy work and just doing my mission, the energy that comes through me, it just always keeps growing. And so I could understand it being like guides and, as you were saying, sponsors from the other side.
Yeah. So your higher selves, I'm going to let you know that was Saint Germain and Jesus. Notice how they both have like a beard and they almost look the same. What is Saint Germain? Saint Germain is violet. Jesus will be more of almost Maya blue. It's like a turquoise color. Okay, but anyhow, yes, and I had done that before, and I had people seen it, and I seen myself. I wasn't out of body, and I seen myself doing this to somebody. What happened was I was at an event, a spiritual retreat, and then all of a sudden this person left herself way too open to spirit. But she was too young, not only as a physical body, 22-year-old woman, but she's also a young soul. But she was really accelerating really quick. And in that moment when there was, like maybe 230 some participants, all that energy was multiplied into her. And a dark entity got into her. And she all of a sudden became weightless, and she was doing these weird things. And I and one other gentleman, it was weird. We had her in our palms of our hands, trying to hold her, but we couldn't hold her. But she was above our eyes. How is that possible? We're not that strong. But anyhow, when I started to put her down, I started to go into my warrior stage state, okay, because that's what I am. Whether you believe it or not, people, it's fine. I'm a warrior stage. Right? I've actually beaten many demons before I even started to notice what was my duty in clearing people. But anyhow, when people see, when I was doing this, I actually see myself, and I was like, what is Jesus Christ doing here? And I was like, wait, what am I? And I looked, I was like, wait, that's supposed to be me. Wait, what the? And then I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but I just gotta keep doing this. Several weeks later, several women called me, hey, I have to tell you this because I'm going crazy, but I have to tell you this. And this was women that didn't talk to each other. And they said, look, I can't fall asleep, but I have to tell you because it's kind of like Jesus is telling me to tell you. But I seen Jesus in you, and I have to tell you that. And Jesus wanted me to tell you that I seen you. And I was like, what did you just say? And I was like, I know what you said, but I just want you. I want to hear it one more time because I don't believe I heard what you said. And she said it again. And I was like, what? This and that. Conversation went going. But then another person called me like 2 days later. Hey, I have to get this out of my mind. But I seen Jesus in you, Jesus Christ. And I was like, wait, what? And I seen a lot of people looking at me like with their eyes wide open, like, what is going on? You know. But the point is yes, Jesus Christ, Saint Germain, Michael, not Michael, the host right now, but Archangel Michael, all these beautiful souls work through us because we're all one. We're all fractals. Sponsors, astral sponsors. I met physical astral sponsors that were ascended masters. Okay, I finally figured it out today after so many things that kept happening. The last time, it was the last time I had a near-death experience. There's no way I should have survived. It was in Iraq. It was my second time. Well, many more times than second time, but it was my second time being blown up by a suicide car filled with explosions. Right? Everybody else was severely injured. Thankfully, no one died because of the energy I had around me. I will say it like that. But nothing happened to me. Not a single thing, not a single scratch. But that's when I was in the light. Again, that was the sixth time I was in the actual light. Well, I was not in the light. I was the actual light. I didn't see nothing, but it was all bright. But what I'm trying to get at is, that was late 2006 when that happened. Okay. In 2008, I asked God that I want to go to Japan. I was still in the military, and somehow I got a contract to go to Japan for a month. On my way back, and beautiful things happened there. I mean, oh my God, my dragon self, all kinds of things happened. But when I was on my way back, I met two people, one woman, one man. By the time they got on, they were almost going to close the plane. And this was a huge, two-story, one of those two-story planes. Yep. It was huge, all right? There was more than enough seats. These people walk in at the very end, right when we're about to take off. They walk in, and there's many seats. One right next to me, two. One on each side, okay? There was one across the way, and then on the next aisle, and then 2 seats back down, there was another one. The gentleman decided to sit way back away from me, okay? The woman sat across the way. She looked at me. I looked at her. I was like, wow, she looks familiar. They were both very pale skinned. They both had white hair. Okay, but they were both wearing almost tactical black everything. But they felt peaceful to me. And I was like, well, they seem around my age, but they feel a lot older, a lot wiser. And the woman wouldn't stop looking at me. I was like, man, I was starting to get worried that maybe the guy was going to attack me or something, because when I looked back, he didn't look happy, but he wasn't mad either. And he would make eye contact with me. Well, the woman got close to me. I don't remember none of the conversation. I just remember a lot of light. A lot of light. Now, what did I just say? They were wearing all black. All right? And what do we see? All of a sudden, everybody's starting to see it now way more open. All these black military things flying around and stuff like that. I guarantee you, people, and there's more things that I'm going to show you guys pretty soon, eventually, in the near future, of how I dissected all these images, all these telltales, legends, whatever you want to call them, how they all actually connect. And they're the people of the, think about it, Black Spear. Okay? What does that TR3 look like? Okay? It almost looks like a spearhead. That battle over Menenberg or something like that, there was a big black spearhead carved into a wood, and it was pointing towards the left. Okay, I believe that's a TR3 or something near that, and that's the only way they can depict it. Because if they would have just put a triangle, they would be like, oh, you know, who knows? It's just a basic shape. Who knows what is that? They won't know what that is. But if we show a spearhead, it will show that it's something aerodynamic that's up in the air. So what I'm telling you guys is that the dark, the ones that look dark, I'm not saying the ones that have been playing the dark. No. Yeah, those are bad people. But the ones that appear to be dark, as long as they don't force you to do anything, they're the good ones, guys. Remember, there is no bad, there is no good, there is no dark, there is no light, there is no cold, there is no hot. There's only interpretation of what is what. It's the same energy. Cold and hot is the same energy. Light and dark is the same energy, just different perspectives.
Yes, yeah. So it's that, million shades of gray.
Yes.
But everything is really
the middle way. It's the gray.
It's about intention, and where your heart is and all. And so it's been a interesting night with the callers tonight, and very uplifting overall. And I've been thinking about forever doing a video on the Ascended Masters, and I guess you'd have to do quite a few series of them, because there's so many to cover. But I know that they're there, and so it's interesting you saying that and picking up on that, because I've felt their energies and actually seen them, myself as well, and sometimes in the past.
So that's how you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I mean, I've had the visual.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's how you know that I'm not just talking bullshit. Now, how did I know that? You never told me that story.
No.
Okay, and I just said what appeared in my mind. That's a telepathic communication coming from your higher self, letting me know, hey, could you just do me this favor real quick? And I'm like, sure, no problem. Doesn't hurt me. And it sucks like, okay, just even Jesus of Nazareth has stated that we came to separate families. Look at what Taylor said. Her own mother would not accept it for any little thing. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that God is evil and this and that and he came to separate families. No, it just means that once you wake up, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to separate you because no one's going to trust you and this and that. They're going to think you're crazy and blah, blah, blah. That's the true meaning of that. If we have to take things technical, people, stop being selfish and stop taking things personal. It's about us, we. While you clean your internal to fix the external. So instead of, if you can't forgive somebody, spit that word up, all right? 2 different words. Instead of for, give for. That person that did you wrong. I mean, why do we even have that prayer that says, God, please don't lead us into temptation? Why would God want to lead you to temptation? Because it doesn't lead you to temptation. It just shows you, hey, you want to try that? Go ahead and explore. That's real, true, unconditional love, people. That is true unconditional love. You do everything for a child and you do everything, you control them and everything. When they grow up, they're going to be very enabled. They're not going to really be able to do it because mom did everything for me all the time. Mom can sing for me. Hi, mom, and then they never grow up.
Very, very interesting and good observations, brother. Well, thank you for the call again tonight. It's always great talking to you. And thank you for sharing.
Well, definitely. Don't forget, people, just fear is an acronym for false evidence or false energy appearing as reality. Once you realize that, your reality won't be so fearful and you will be a lot more limitless. You're only limited to your creativity. Pain is temporary. Pride is eternal. Fulfillment lasts forever. The fight will be worth it. Life will always be up to what your interpretations allow it to be. Good night, y'all. Big hug to all of you.
Good night, brother. Thank you for sharing.
Good night.
Namaste.
Namaste.
And that was Natsaya. And, we've covered a lot of really good things, a lot of really positive things tonight. And it's been an interesting night, and one full of love and positivity and hope and, excitement, which is good. And yes, pray for peace. And we just have to see what we want to see, and clearly see that. So what we want to see happen, we have to have a clear picture of it. And visualize it and use your heart center to feel the certainty that it's going to happen. And again, obviously we have to prepare physically, we have to prepare in many different ways, and as he was touching on as well, in these times we need to take care of our temple and recognize that there is so much poison around us all the time, in the air, in the water, from pesticides, chemtrails, GMO foods, all this stuff. We need to purge, we need to cleanse on a regular basis, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And everything is moving upwards in vibration. So everything is speeding up. So we really have to pay extra attention to cleansing and purging. And where you could really go from feeling like crap to feeling incredible at the flip of a switch. So I wanted to share that with you guys as well. So, as always, guys, thank you for joining me, and we'll be doing this again shortly. I'm hoping to schedule for Thursday night. I hope you guys will be able to join us again Thursday night at the same time. And I look forward to having more conversations. May you guys always be blessed with abundant light, love, peace, happiness, and prosperity. God bless, my friends, and namaste.